The courtroom smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a place where decisions were made quietly and lives were rearranged without ceremony. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, landing in pale rectangles on the floor. At the center of it all sat Marcus Hale, composed, confident, already victorious in his own mind. He didn't look at his wife, not once. Marcus had perfected the posture of a man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. His tailored suit rested effortlessly on his shoulders. His hands were relaxed, folded loosely as if he were waiting for a delayed flight, not the legal erasure of a woman he had spent 14 years dismantling. Across the aisle, Elena Hale sat alone. No entourage, no whispered consultations, no legal theater. Just her, a straight-backed chair, and a slim, weathered folder resting on her lap. It was old. The edges had softened with time. The clasp was scratched, dulled from years of being opened and closed by careful hands. She kept one palm over it, as though it might drift away if she didn't. Elena's eyes stayed forward. She had learned long ago that meeting Marcus's gaze only fed him. The judge cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the final submissions. The case had moved quickly, too quickly. The numbers had aligned, the paperwork had flowed smoothly, and the narrative had already been written by better-funded attorneys and sharper suits. Marcus had made sure of that. He had stripped Elena of access before she even realized the doors were closing, accounts frozen under technicalities, properties transferred under obscure clauses, business holdings rerouted through shell entities bearing names she didn't recognize anymore. Each move had been legal, clean, invisible. That was Marcus's gift. He didn't break rules, he hollowed them out. He leaned toward his attorney, murmuring something that drew a small, satisfied smile. They had rehearsed this ending. The judge would speak, the assets would be allocated, Elena would leave with what the law allowed her to have, which was almost nothing, and Marcus would walk away lighter. The judge began to speak. Given the evidence presented, the court finds... Marcus shifted slightly, already anticipating the weightless relief of finality. Elena remained still. She remembered the first time Marcus had told her she was lucky to have him. They had been standing in a narrow kitchen years ago, when success was still a rumor and hunger had sharpened every word. He had said it gently then, as advice. Later, it became instruction. Over the years, he had taught her silence. He corrected her speech in public, praised her compliance in private, and reminded her that stability came from obedience. Months passed, and the exclusion deepened. Sunday brunches, our ritual since her college days, were canceled repeatedly. Damon scheduled a strategy session, Mira would text. I learned about milestones through social media. Ego Thread's first pop-up shop, a feature in a local magazine. In one Instagram post, Mira and Damon posed with a check from a minor investor, captioning it, "Grateful for partners who believe in our vision." No mention of me. When I commented, "Proud of you, sweetie," it was liked but not replied to. Hurt turned to suspicion when I requested financial reports, part of our agreement. They arrived late, pages of jargon I struggled to decipher. Sales were up, but expenses seemed inflated. Luxury office renovations, Damon's consulting fees. I called Mira. "Honey, can you explain these numbers?" Her tone was clipped. "Mom, Damon handles finances. He's the expert." Expert. Damon, with his MBA and flashy car, versus me, the retired teacher who balanced checkbooks by hand. The dagger came 6 months after the investment. A text from Mira. "Mom, we're restructuring. Damon thinks it's best if you step back completely. We'll buy out your shares eventually." Step back? I owned 55%, majority stakeholder as per the contract I'd insisted on for protection. My heart shattered. This wasn't my daughter. This was Damon's influence, whispering that I was outdated, meddlesome, a relic from a simpler time. I remembered the first time I met him at their wedding. He seemed charming, ambitious for Mira, but now I saw the manipulation, isolating her from me, positioning himself as the savior. That night, something ignited, a fire buried under years of maternal sacrifice. I wasn't just a check writer, I was Ilara, who had taught generations of kids resilience, who had nursed Theo through chemo while working full-time, who had built a life from ashes. I dug out the contracts, poring over them with a magnifying glass. Rights, access to books, veto on major decisions, audit clause. Damon had conveniently ignored them. I called my old friend Leela, a retired lawyer from the school board. "Ilara, you've got leverage," she said after reviewing. "Demand an audit. Uncover what's hidden." Nervous but determined, I emailed Mira and Damon. As majority shareholder, I request a full financial audit within 30 days. Silence for a week, then a curt reply from Damon. "Unnecessary, everything's above board." That fueled me. I hired an independent auditor using my small emergency fund. The report arrived. The fallout did not arrive loudly. It arrived methodically. By the following morning, Marcus Hale's name had been flagged across multiple financial systems. Accounts he believed untouchable were frozen pending review. Transfers scheduled weeks in advance failed without explanation. Phones that once rang endlessly went silent. By noon, 2 investigators waited in the corridor outside the courtroom. They did not rush him, they did not threaten, they simply asked him to sit. Marcus tried to speak with the confidence that had always rescued him before. He invoked misunderstandings, claimed clerical errors, suggested cooperation in exchange for time. They listened. Then they placed documents on the table. Copies, not Elena's originals, their own. The trust had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had watched quietly, recorded patiently, triggered cleanly. Every shortcut Marcus had taken, every shell, every concealed transfer, every assumption that silence meant ignorance had been cataloged. The investigation expanded beyond divorce. Tax exposure, fraud, obstruction. Civil court had become a doorway. Criminal court was the room beyond it. Marcus was not arrested that day. That came later. What happened first was worse. He was removed. Boards convened without him.
The collapse did not arrive with noise. It arrived with notifications. Accounts flagged, transfers halted, authorizations revoked. The systems Julian trusted more than people began rejecting him without explanation. By the time his phone stopped vibrating, he already understood what that silence meant. Evelyn had not taken anything. She had reclaimed it. Within 48 hours, auditors requested records Julian could not immediately produce. The structures he had layered for efficiency now demanded transparency. Each shortcut he had taken revealed another thread that led back to him. The investigation widened, not because of Evelyn's actions, but because of Julian's past choices. Deferred filings, aggressive valuations, internal memos written with the confidence that no one would ever read them aloud. Now they were being read carefully. Julian met with lawyers who spoke differently than before. Less assurance, more caution. Words like exposure and escalation replaced certainty. He tried to negotiate time. Time, he learned, was no longer his. When the formal notice arrived, it was brief. Assets frozen pending review. Travel restricted. Cooperation required. Criminal proceedings followed quietly. There were no cameras when Julian was escorted from his office building for the last time. No audience when his board voted unanimously to remove him. No sympathy when partners distanced themselves with statements drafted by people who once praised his leadership. The courtroom returned weeks later for the final ruling. Evelyn entered alone again. This time, the room felt different. The judge's tone was measured, unhurried. The findings were clear. The trust was valid. The concealment was documented. The attempt to erase it through marital dissolution had failed. Full control was restored. Julian did not look at Evelyn. He stared at the table in front of him, hands folded tightly, posture diminished. The man who once filled rooms now occupied as little space as possible. The judge concluded without flourish. "This court recognizes the integrity of preparation," he said, "and the consequences of arrogance." Evelyn stood.
She looked at Victor then. "You said it was unnecessary." Victor stood abruptly. "This is absurd. Those clauses were never intended to—" Calder spoke over him, gently. "Intent doesn't amend ink." The judge read, turned a page, then another. Color drained from Victor's face in increments, as if each line removed something vital. His confidence did not shatter. It thinned, became brittle. "These clauses," the judge said, choosing words carefully, "tie personal liability to undisclosed transfers." Victor's lawyer whispered urgently. Victor did not respond. Calder closed his folder. "There is more," he said, "but it extends beyond marital assets." The room seemed to lean forward now, no longer toward Victor. "Tax discrepancies," Calder continued, "false valuations, a pattern of concealment." The word pattern lingered.
Yes, Your Honor. And Crown Holdings East is owned by a parent company, the attorney said quickly. The judge's eyes lifted, which was never disclosed to the beneficiary. Silence. Rebecca Lynn stood now. "The parent company," she said, "was created 3 weeks before the first agreement Miss Hale signed. Its sole purpose was to obscure beneficial control." She placed a document on the bench. "This shows internal correspondence acknowledging that disclosure would complicate consent." Elias stood abruptly. "This is outrageous." The judge did not look at him. "Mr. Crown," he said, "you will remain seated." Elias remained standing. The judge turned slowly then, eyes finally meeting his. "Sit," he repeated. Elias sat. The judge exhaled once, controlled. "This court does not appreciate being used to launder bad faith." He turned back to Mara. "Ms. Hale, you appear without counsel, yet you arrive with evidence most represented parties never find." Mara spoke softly. "My father believed paperwork outlives people," he said. "He taught me where to look." The judge nodded. "It appears he also taught you when to wait." Elias felt something unfamiliar tighten in his chest. The judge continued, "The court will not rule on summary judgment today." A pause. "Instead," he said, "the court refers this matter for review of potential fraud, misrepresentation, and conspiracy to conceal beneficial ownership." The word conspiracy landed like a crack through stone. Elias's attorney stood again, voice strained. "Your Honor." "Enough," the judge said. He closed the folder. Outside, sirens passed distantly, unrelated, but the sound threaded through the room like omen. Elias looked again at the envelope. At Mara. For the first time, he understood something had been built beneath him while he was admiring the height of his own position, and he could not see the bottom.
The folder was archived, still intact, because power, she learned, is loud, but truth only needs to be documented once, and arrogance, given enough room, always signs its own ending.
Justice Calder took the bench and began without preamble. "The court has reviewed the investigator's findings." He paused. The room held its breath. "It appears," he continued, "that Mr. Hale knowingly withheld material financial information during property transfer, custody determination, and support calculation." Evans' lawyer stood. "Your Honor, if I may?" Justice Calder raised a hand. "You may not." He turned a page. Additionally, evidence suggests intentional manipulation of custodial communications and unauthorized use of funds held in trust for minors. The words were clinical. The effect was not. Evan felt his chest tighten. This was no longer about advantage. This was exposure. Justice Calder looked at him. "Mr. Hale, this court is referring these findings to the district attorney." The room shifted. A sound escaped someone in the gallery, quickly stifled. Evan shook his head once. "That's excessive." Justice Calder's voice remained level. "What's excessive is assuming this court would ignore a record because it was built quietly." He turned to Mara. "Miss Hale, please stand." She did. "The transfer of the property is void," the judge said. "The house reverts to you effective immediately." Evan's lawyer whispered urgently, but Evan did not hear him. The house, the certainty he had anchored everything to, gone with a sentence. Justice Calder continued. "Primary custody is granted to Miss Hale. Mr. Hale's access will be supervised pending further review." The word supervised struck harder than any accusation. Evan opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left that sounded reasonable. "And finally," the judge said, "the court orders full restitution of misused funds, plus penalties." He set the file down. "This matter is no longer within my discretion alone." Two officers stepped forward, not rushed, not aggressive, procedural. One spoke Evan's name. In that moment, the room seemed to pull away from him. He had always believed consequences arrived with warning. He had mistaken delay for mercy. As the officers guided him toward the side door, Evan looked back once. Mara stood still. Her family did not touch her. They did not need to. She was not watching him. She was watching the folder. Justice Calder addressed her again, softer now. "Miss Hale, you did not retain counsel." "No," she said. "Why?" She considered the question. "Because the truth was already written." Justice Calder nodded. "Indeed." The gavel fell. Outside, the air felt different, lighter. Mara stepped onto the courthouse steps with her family beside her. Cameras waited across the street, but she did not look toward them. She handed the folder to her father for a moment, flexed her fingers, then took it back. Inside that folder were copies now, court orders, deeds restored, a future made solid again, not by noise, but by foundation. Weeks later, Mara stood in the house alone. The children's drawings were still on the refrigerator where she had left them months before. She did not rush to change anything. She opened a window. Light moved across the floor, unchallenged. On the kitchen table, the folder rested one last time. She removed the original document, the one written in her mother's hand, and placed it in a drawer. It had done its work. Mara closed the drawer gently. Power, she had learned, did not need to announce itself. It only needed to be true. And in the end, it was never the loudest voice that survived the court. It was the one that kept the record.